Baby found a German Shepherd, stuck in a construction pipe. What happened next left everyone in tears. What you're about to hear will absolutely break your heart and restore your faith in humanity at the same time. Before we begin this incredible story, hit that like button, share with someone who loves dogs, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The morning fog hadn't lifted yet when 5-year-old Tommy Peterson heard the sound that would change everything. It started as a whimper, so faint his grandfather Henry almost missed it entirely. They were taking their usual morning walk past the old Riverside construction site, a place that had been abandoned for 3 years after the development company went bankrupt. The chain-link fence surrounding it was rusted and bent in places. Warning signs faded to the point where you could barely read them anymore. "Grandpa, stop," Tommy said suddenly, his small hand tugging at Henry's weathered jacket. The old man, 68 years old, with knees that protested every step, paused and looked down at his grandson. Tommy's eyes were wide, that look children get when they know something adults don't. "What is it, buddy?" Henry asked, checking his watch. They needed to get back soon. Tommy's mother, Lisa, would be leaving for her shift at the hospital, and she'd like to see her son before she left. "Listen," Tommy whispered, and there it was again. A sound that made Henry's chest tighten. It was coming from inside the construction site, from somewhere deep within the maze of concrete pipes and abandoned equipment. "That's probably just the wind, Tommy. These old pipes make all sorts of noises." But even as Henry said it, he knew it wasn't true. That was an animal in distress. The question was whether they should get involved. Tommy was already at the fence, his small fingers wrapped around the rusty links. "We have to help," he said, with a determination that reminded Henry so much of Tommy's late father that it made his heart ache. Michael had been gone for 2 years now, killed in a car accident that had left their small family fractured and struggling to heal. "Tommy, we can't just go in there. It's dangerous and it's private property." But Tommy had found a gap in the fence, one just big enough for a small boy to squeeze through. Before Henry could stop him, Tommy was on the other side, his blue jacket disappearing into the morning mist. "Tommy, get back here right now!" Henry's voice cracked with panic. He looked around desperately. The street was empty, no one to help, no one to call. With a grunt of effort and a silent prayer that his knees would hold, Henry squeezed through the gap, tearing his jacket on a protruding wire. The construction site was a graveyard of broken dreams, half-built foundations filled with murky water, stacks of rotting lumber, and everywhere, those massive concrete drainage pipes, some standing upright like ancient monuments, others lying on their sides, creating tunnels that led to darkness. Tommy was already 20 feet ahead, moving with the fearlessness that only children possess. The whimpering was louder now, more desperate, and it was definitely coming from one of the horizontal pipes near the back of the site. "Tommy, wait for me," Henry called, but the boy was already on his hands and knees, peering into a pipe that was about 4 feet in diameter. "There's a dog in here!" Tommy's voice echoed strangely from inside the pipe. "He's stuck! Grandpa, he's really stuck!" Henry dropped to his knees beside the pipe, his joints screaming in protest. He pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it into the darkness. What he saw made his stomach drop. About 15 feet into the pipe, a German Shepherd was wedged sideways, its body twisted at an unnatural angle. The dog's eyes reflected the light, wide with terror and pain. How long had it been there? Days? The pipe was partially filled with muddy water, and the dog was shivering violently. "Oh, Jesus," Henry muttered. The dog tried to move toward them, but yelped in pain, unable to turn properly in the confined space. "We have to get him out," Tommy said, already starting to crawl into the pipe. Henry grabbed him by the collar. "No!" "Absolutely not. You are not going in there." "But Grandpa..." "No buts. That pipe could collapse. The dog could bite you. We need to call for help." Henry pulled out his phone again, dialing animal control. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, before a tired voice answered. "Animal control, this is Janet. We have an emergency. There's a dog trapped in a drainage pipe at the old Riverside construction site. It's been here for days by the look of it. Sir, our first available unit won't be there for at least 3 hours. We're dealing with a situation at the highway right now. Multiple animals involved in a truck accident. 3 hours? This dog might not have 3 hours. I'm sorry, sir. That's the best we can do. Can you stay with the animal until we arrive?" Henry looked at Tommy's face, at the tears starting to form in his grandson's eyes. "We'll be here," he said, and hung up. Tommy had laid down on his stomach, his head and shoulders inside the pipe. "It's okay, boy," he was saying in a soft, soothing voice. "We're going to help you. I promise we're going to help you." The dog whimpered in response, a sound so pitiful it made Henry's eyes water. He'd never been much of an animal person, but something about this situation, about the desperation in that sound, cut right through him. "Tommy, come out of there. Let me try to reach him." Tommy wiggled back out, his face streaked with dirt and tears. "He's scared, Grandpa. He's so scared." Henry lowered himself to the ground, ignoring the sharp rocks digging into his stomach. He stretched his arm into the pipe as far as it would go, but his fingers barely reached 8 feet. The dog was almost twice that distance away. "Hey there, boy," Henry called softly. "Can you come toward us? Come on, just a little bit." The dog tried. God, how it tried. Henry could see its muscles straining, hear its claws scraping against the concrete, but it was wedged too tightly. Every movement seemed to cause it pain. "His collar," Tommy said suddenly. "Grandpa, I can see something on his collar." "It's shiny." Henry squinted, adjusting the angle of his phone's flashlight. Tommy was right. There was something metallic attached to the dog's collar, partially hidden by its matted fur. It looked like a tag, but not a normal pet tag. This was larger, more official looking. "Can you see any numbers or letters?" Henry asked. Tommy pressed his face against the pipe opening. "There's something K9 and numbers. 47, I think. K9 Unit 47. Henry's mind raced. This wasn't just someone's pet. This was a working dog, possibly police or military. But what was it doing here? And more importantly, who had left it to die? "Grandpa, look!" Tommy pointed toward the street. A white van had pulled up outside the fence and 2 men were getting out. For a moment, Henry felt relief. Maybe someone had come to help. But something about the way the men moved, the way they stood there watching, not approaching, made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "Tommy, come here," Henry said quietly, pulling his grandson close. The men were just standing there, watching them through the fence. One of them was on his phone, speaking rapidly, though Henry couldn't make out the words. "Are they going to help us?" Tommy asked. "I don't know, buddy. Let's just focus on the dog for now." Henry turned back to the pipe, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling of being watched. The German Shepherd had gone quiet, which worried him more than the whimpering. "Hey boy, stay with us. Help is coming." "Scout," Tommy said suddenly. "What? His name should be Scout. Every dog needs a name, and he looks like a scout." Henry couldn't argue with 5-year-old logic. "Okay, Scout it is. Scout, you hang in there." The next hour was agony. Henry tried everything he could think of. He found a long piece of rebar and tried to push it toward Scout, thinking maybe the dog could bite it and they could pull him out. But Scout was too weak, too trapped to even lift his head properly. Tommy never left the pipe opening, talking constantly to Scout, telling him stories about his toys, his mom, his school, the kind of rambling, innocent chatter that only a child could maintain in such a desperate situation. The men by the van hadn't moved. They were still there, still watching, and now Henry was certain they weren't there to help. There was something predatory about their patience, something calculating about the way they observed. "Grandpa, Scout's not moving very much anymore." Tommy's voice was thick with tears. Is he dying?" Henry's throat felt like sandpaper. "No, buddy. He's just tired. He's saving his energy." But Henry wasn't sure that was true. Scout's breathing had become labored, each exhale a visible effort in the cold morning air. They were running out of time. That's when Henry heard the trucks, not animal control, but construction vehicles. 3 pickup trucks pulled up to the fence, and several men in hard hats and work boots got out. One of them, a burly man with a graying beard, called out, "You folks okay in there?" "There's a dog trapped in this pipe," Henry shouted back. "We need help." The construction workers didn't hesitate. They found the gap in the fence and squeezed through, bringing tools and equipment with them. The bearded man, who introduced himself as Big Jim, took one look at the situation and shook his head. "That's a tough one. Dogs wedge good. We're going to need to be real careful here. Can you cut the pipe?" Henry asked. "Not without risking crushing the dog. These pipes are under pressure when you cut them. They can shift suddenly." Big Jim rubbed his beard, thinking. "We could try to widen the opening, maybe slide something slick under him to help him slide out." More workers arrived. Word had spread somehow, maybe through social media, maybe just through the mysterious network of human compassion that activates in crisis. Within 30 minutes, there were a dozen people at the site, all trying to figure out how to save Scout. Tommy never left his post by the pipe. He'd found a stick and was gently pushing it through the water towards Scout, not to prod him, but just to let him know he wasn't alone. "It's okay, Scout. All these people are here for you. You're going to be okay." The German Shepherd's tail moved slightly, just a twitch, but it was enough to show he was still fighting. "Where's his owner?" one of the construction workers asked. "A dog like this German Shepherd, good breeding by the look of him, someone's got to be missing him." Henry thought about the K9 tag, about the men in the van who were still there, still watching. "I don't know," he said carefully, "but something's not right here." Big Jim followed Henry's gaze to the van. His expression darkened. "Those fellas with you?" "No, they showed up about an hour ago, just watching." "Well, they're about to get a better view," Big Jim said, pulling out his phone. "My nephew works for the local news. This kind of story, dog rescue, community coming together, they eat this stuff up. Let's see how much those boys like being on camera." Within minutes, Big Jim was on the phone, describing the situation. Henry could hear the excitement in the voice on the other end. A dog rescue was exactly the kind of human interest story that local news lived for. But something else was happening. Scout had started making noise again, not whimpering, but a low growl. It was directed at something specific, and when Henry followed the dog's gaze, he realized Scout was looking at the van, at the men who were now clearly agitated, talking animatedly on their phones. "Tommy," Henry said quietly, "I want you to do something for me. I want you to very carefully look at Scout's collar again. Tell me everything you can see." Tommy repositioned himself, squinting into the darkness. "There's the shiny tag that says K9 Unit 47. But there's something else. It's small, like a little black box attached to the collar." A black box. Henry's mind raced. What kind of dog had electronic equipment on its collar? What kind of dog made grown men in vans nervous? What kind of dog ended up trapped in a pipe at an abandoned construction site? "He's a police dog," said a new voice. Henry turned to see a man in his 50s, wearing a worn military jacket. He had the bearing of someone who'd seen action, the kind of straight-backed posture that never really goes away. "That's tactical equipment on his collar. I'd bet my pension this dog's either current or former military or law enforcement." "I'm Marcus," the man said, extending his hand to Henry. "Former Army, K9 unit. I heard about this on the neighborhood Facebook page. Thought I might be able to help." Marcus approached the pipe slowly, deliberately. He didn't crouch down immediately, but stood there, letting Scout see him, smell him. Then he did something unexpected. He gave a sharp whistle, 3 short bursts followed by one long one. Scout's reaction was immediate. His head lifted, his ears perked forward, and he gave a single weak bark in response. "Thought so," Marcus said, finally kneeling by the pipe. "This dog's been trained. Military or police, definitely." He looked at the collar through the pipe. "That black box Tommy saw? That's a camera. This dog's been recording." The implications hit Henry like a brick. A trained service dog with a camera, trapped in a pipe, with mysterious men watching. This wasn't an accident. This was something else entirely. "We need to get him out now," Marcus said, his voice taking on an urgency that hadn't been there before. "If he's who I think he might be, if he's connected to what I've been hearing about..." He trailed off, glancing at Tommy. "What have you been hearing?" Henry asked. Marcus lowered his voice. "A handler died last month. David Mitchell, good man, served 2 tours in Afghanistan with his K9 partner. Died under suspicious circumstances. His dog went missing the same night." "You think this is his dog?" David's dog was a German Shepherd named Ranger, K9 Unit 47. They were working private security after David left the service, investigating some kind of corporate espionage thing. David told me he was onto something big, something dangerous. Next thing I know, he's dead, and Ranger's missing. Henry felt Tommy's hand slip into his. The boy was listening, understanding more than a 5-year-old should have to understand. "Those men in the van," Henry said. "Yeah," Marcus nodded. "If this is Ranger, and he's got footage on that camera of whatever David was investigating, then those men are here to make sure that footage never sees the light of day. But they're not doing anything. They're just watching. They're waiting for us to leave. They can't do anything with all these witnesses. But the moment we're gone, the moment that dog's alone..." Marcus didn't need to finish the sentence. Big Jim had been listening. "Well, then we don't leave. Simple as that. We get this dog out and we don't leave him alone for a second." The crowd around the pipe had grown. News of the rescue attempt had spread through social media like wildfire. There were now at least 30 people at the site, with more arriving every minute. Someone had set up a live stream on Facebook, and hundreds were watching online. The men in the van were looking increasingly uncomfortable. One of them was on his phone constantly, clearly reporting to someone. The other kept checking his watch, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "I've got an idea," said a young woman who just arrived. She was carrying a medical bag and wore scrubs under her jacket. "I'm Kelly. I'm a vet tech. I brought some supplies." She examined the situation, then pulled out a small bottle. "This is medical lubricant. If we can get it under him, around him, it might help him slide out. But someone's going to have to go in there and apply it." "I'll do it," Tommy said immediately. "No," Henry and Marcus said in unison. "I'm the only one small enough," Tommy insisted, "and Scout trusts me. He won't be scared if it's me." Henry wanted to argue, but looking at the pipe, at the size of the opening, he knew Tommy was right. None of the adults could fit far enough in to reach Scout. "It's too dangerous," Henry said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Grandpa, Scout saved people when he was working. That's what K9 dogs do, right? They save people. Now it's our turn to save him." The simple truth of it, delivered in a 5-year-old's matter-of-fact tone, silenced all arguments. Marcus knelt down to Tommy's level. "If you do this, you have to listen to everything we say. If we tell you to come out, you come out immediately. No arguments? Deal?" Tommy nodded solemnly. "Deal." They prepared carefully. Kelly showed Tommy how to apply the lubricant, where to put it for maximum effect. They tied a rope around Tommy's waist so they could pull him out quickly if needed. Henry's hand shook as he double-checked the knots. "I'm scared, Grandpa," Tommy whispered, so quietly only Henry could hear. "I know, buddy. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when you are scared." Tommy nodded, took a deep breath, and started crawling into the pipe. The crowd fell silent. Even the construction workers, tough men who'd seen plenty in their careers, held their breath as the small boy disappeared into the darkness. "Hi, Scout," Tommy's voice echoed from the pipe. "It's me. I'm going to help you, okay? This might feel weird, but it's going to help you get out." Henry could hear Tommy talking constantly, the kind of stream of consciousness chatter that was probably as much for his own comfort as Scout's. "My dad would have liked you. He liked dogs. We were going to get a dog before he went to heaven. Mom says maybe someday we can get one, when she's not so sad anymore." Something twisted in Henry's chest. He hadn't known Lisa had been considering a dog. There was so much about his daughter-in-law's grief that she kept hidden, trying to be strong for Tommy. "Okay, I'm putting the slippery stuff on you now," Tommy's voice continued. "It's cold, I know. I'm sorry, but it's going to help." Minutes felt like hours. Henry found himself holding Marcus's arm, needing the support. The crowd pressed closer, everyone straining to hear what was happening in the pipe. "I think I got it all," Tommy finally called. But Scout's really stuck. His leg is bent funny. "Come back out, Tommy," Henry called. "You did great. Come back out now." As Tommy started backing out of the pipe, something happened. Scout, whether from the lubricant or from some final reserve of strength inspired by Tommy's presence, began to move. The crowd could hear it, the scraping, struggling sound of the dog trying to free himself. "He's moving!" Tommy shouted. "Scout's moving!" "Keep coming out, Tommy," Marcus commanded. "Let him have space." Tommy emerged from the pipe, covered in mud and grime, his face flushed with excitement and fear. Henry grabbed him immediately, pulling him close, not caring about the dirt. Inside the pipe, Scout was fighting. They could hear him, see his shadow moving in the darkness. The lubricant was working, allowing him to slowly, painfully inch his way forward. "Come on, boy," Marcus called. "That's it. Keep coming." The crowd began to cheer, encouraging the dog. Someone started chanting, "Scout! Scout! Scout!" and others joined in. It was surreal, this group of strangers united in their desperate hope for one trapped dog. And then suddenly, Scout's head appeared at the pipe opening. His eyes were wild with fear and pain, his breathing labored. But he was moving. Marcus reached in, grabbed his collar carefully, and helped guide him out. The moment Scout was free, the crowd erupted. People were crying, cheering, hugging strangers. Tommy broke free from Henry's arms and ran to Scout, who, despite his obvious pain and exhaustion, licked the boy's face weakly. But the celebration was short-lived. The men from the van were approaching, and they didn't look happy. "That's our dog," one of them said, pulling out what looked like official documentation. "We're from Animal Welfare Services. This is a dangerous animal that escaped from our facility. We need to take him immediately." "Like hell you are." Big Jim stepped forward, his construction crew forming a wall behind him. "This is a police dog," Marcus said firmly. "K9 Unit 47. His handler was David Mitchell. I want to see your credentials." The man's face tightened. "The dog is dangerous. He attacks someone. We have orders to put him down." "No!" Tommy screamed, throwing his arms around Scout's neck. The dog, despite barely being able to stand, positioned himself between Tommy and the men, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "You're not animal welfare," Kelly said suddenly. She'd been looking at their van with her phone. "I just called animal welfare. They don't have any units in this area, and they've never heard of you." The two men exchanged glances. The one with the documents took a step back. "This doesn't concern you people. The dog comes with us, or we call the real police." "Please do," Marcus said, pulling out his own phone. "I've got the chief's number right here. He'd be very interested to know why two men with fake credentials are trying to steal a K9 unit whose handler recently died under suspicious circumstances." The tension was electric. The crowd pressed closer, phones out, recording everything. The live stream viewer count had climbed into the thousands. Whatever these men had planned, they hadn't counted on this many witnesses. That's when they heard the sirens. Real police cars, multiple units, racing toward the construction site. Someone in the crowd had called 911. The two men made a decision. Without another word, they turned and walked quickly back to their van. But as they reached the fence, one turned back and looked directly at Henry. "This isn't over," he said quietly, but his words carried. "That dog has something that doesn't belong to you. We'll be back for it." The van peeled away just as the first police car arrived. What followed was chaos. Police taking statements, Kelly providing emergency medical care to Scout. Reporters arriving as Big Jim's nephew had promised. Through it all, Tommy never left Scout's side, and Scout, despite his injuries, never took his eyes off Tommy. "We need to get him to a vet hospital," Kelly said urgently. "He's got internal injuries, possible broken ribs, severe dehydration. He needs immediate care." "I'll take him," Marcus said. "I know a vet who specializes in military dogs. She'll help." "I'm coming too," Tommy said firmly. Henry looked at his watch. Lisa would be at work now, in the middle of her shift. He needed to call her, needed to explain why her son was covered in mud and attached to an injured German shepherd who might be the key to a murder investigation. "Tommy, we need to call your mom first." "She'll understand," Tommy said with the confidence only a child could have. "Scout needs us." Dad would have helped too. He always said we should help when someone needs it. As they prepared to transport Scout, Marcus pulled Henry aside. "Those men will be back. Whatever's on that camera, whatever David died for, they want it destroyed. This isn't over." Henry looked at his grandson, who was carefully helping lift Scout onto a makeshift stretcher, whispering encouragements to the dog. "Then we'd better make sure Scout survives. For David, for Tommy, for whatever truth that camera holds." The crowd began to disperse, but not before many of them gave Henry their contact information, offering to help with vet bills, offering to stand guard, offering whatever support was needed. The construction site had become something else that morning, a place where a community had come together to save one dog, not knowing they were actually saving much more. As they loaded Scout into Marcus's truck, Henry noticed something. The black box on Scout's collar, the camera Marcus had identified, was blinking a small red light. It was still recording. Whatever happened to David Mitchell, whatever conspiracy had led to Scout being trapped in that pipe, the evidence was right there, hanging from the collar of a brave dog who'd survived against all odds. And now, with Tommy's small hand resting on his head and a growing network of protectors around him, Scout might finally be able to complete his last mission, revealing the truth about his handler's death. The sun had finally burned through the morning fog, casting long shadows across the construction site. As they drove away, Henry saw two things that made his blood run cold. First, there were fresh tire tracks leading to the exact spot where Scout had been trapped, tracks that looked deliberate, purposeful. Second, in the distance, following them at a careful distance, was another van. This one was black, with tinted windows, and it was definitely following them. "Marcus?" Henry said quietly, not wanting to alarm Tommy. "I see it," Marcus replied, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. "Don't worry. I've got friends waiting at the vet clinic, real friends, military friends. Whatever this is, whatever David was investigating, we're going to see it through." Tommy, exhausted from his ordeal, had fallen asleep with his head resting against Scout's side. The dog, despite his pain, had curved his body protectively around the boy. Even barely conscious, Scout was still protecting, still serving. The vet clinic was only 10 minutes away, but Henry knew those would be the longest 10 minutes of his life. Because now, they weren't just trying to save a dog. They were protecting evidence, protecting Tommy, and possibly uncovering something that powerful people had already killed to keep secret. But looking at his grandson's peaceful face, at the determination in Marcus's eyes, at Scout's steady breathing, Henry felt something he hadn't felt since his son Michael's death. Purpose. They were going to save this dog. They were going to find the truth. And they were going to do it together. The black van maintained its distance, following them through every turn, a dark reminder that Scout's rescue from the pipe was just the beginning of something much bigger, much more dangerous. But also, perhaps much more important. As they pulled into the vet clinic's parking lot, Henry saw what Marcus had meant by friends. 3 men in civilian clothes but with unmistakable military bearing stood by the entrance. They nodded to Marcus, their eyes tracking, the black van that had stopped across the street. "Let's get Scout inside," Marcus said. "Time to find out what David died trying to tell us." The camera on Scout's collar continued its steady blinking, recording everything, just as David had trained his partner to do. Even trapped, even dying, Scout had never stopped doing his job. Now, it was their turn to complete the mission. Tommy stirred as they prepared to move Scout inside. "Is Scout going to be okay, Grandpa?" Henry looked at the injured dog, at the men ready to protect them, at his brave grandson who'd risked everything to save a stranger's dog. "Yeah, buddy. Scout's going to be fine. We all are." But even as he said it, Henry knew the real fight was just beginning. Whatever was on that camera, whatever David Mitchell had discovered, it was worth killing for. And now they were all part of it, bound together by a morning's rescue that had become something much more. The automatic doors of the vet clinic opened, and they carried Scout inside, into safety, into medical care, but also into the center of a mystery that would test them all. Behind them, the black van waited, patient and menacing, a reminder that some secrets don't stay buried, even in concrete pipes at abandoned construction sites. But Scout had survived being left to die. Tommy had found courage he didn't know he had, and a community had come together to save them both. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The red light on Scout's collar continued to blink, steady as a heartbeat, recording everything, keeping David's last mission alive. And somewhere in that digital memory, the truth waited to be discovered. The veterinary clinic's emergency room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Tommy's hand never left Scout's fur as doctor. Elena Vasquez worked with practiced efficiency, her movements quick but gentle. The German Shepherd's breathing was shallow, each rise and fall of his chest, a victory against whatever poison still coursed through his system. "This isn't just exhaustion and injury, Doctor," Elena said, her accent barely noticeable except when she was stressed. "There's something in his system. Poison, but old, maybe 3 or 4 days. Someone wanted this dog to die slowly." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Can you save him?" "I'll do everything I can, but I need to know what poison. Without that." She didn't finish, but they all understood. Scout's eyes found Tommy's, and the boy leaned closer. "You're going to be okay," Tommy whispered. "You have to be okay." We just found each other. Henry's phone buzzed, Lisa's number. He stepped into the hallway to answer, already dreading the conversation. "Dad, what's going on?" "The hospital's buzzing about some dog rescue, and someone said they saw Tommy on a live stream crawling into a pipe." Her voice was high, scared. "Lisa, honey, everyone's safe. Tommy's fine. We rescued a dog, and it's complicated, but I'm coming. Where are you? You're in the middle of your shift." "Where are you, Dad?" Henry gave her the clinic's address, then added quietly, "Lisa, there's something else. This dog, he belonged to a soldier who died. There are people following us, bad people. Maybe you should—" "I'm coming," she repeated and hung up. When Henry returned to the emergency room, Marcus was carefully removing Scout's collar. The black box, the camera, came away with a small click. Marcus held it like it contained nuclear codes. "Whatever's on here, David died for it," he said quietly. "We need to see what it recorded." Dr. Elena looked up from inserting an IV into Scout's leg. "There's a computer in my office. But first, this dog needs surgery. Internal bleeding, 2 broken ribs, and whatever poison is still in his system. It'll take hours." Tommy's face crumpled. "Hours? I'll stay with him the whole time, doctor," Elena promised. "But you should go home, get cleaned up, rest." "No." Tommy's voice was firm. Scout was alone in that pipe for days. He's not going to be alone anymore. The determination in his small voice silenced any arguments. Marcus nodded slowly. "The boy's right. We don't leave soldiers behind." While Dr. Elena prepared Scout for surgery, Marcus led them to a small waiting room. His 3 military friends had positioned themselves strategically, one at the front entrance, one at the back, one watching the black van that still sat across the street. "Who are they?" Henry asked, nodding toward the men. "My unit," Marcus said simply. "We served together in Afghanistan. When I told them about David, about Scout, they came immediately. David saved my son's life once, in Kandahar. My son was part of a convoy that got ambushed. David and Ranger, that's Scout's real name, they found the IED before it could detonate. Gave everyone time to get clear." "Ranger," Tommy said softly, testing the name. "But he looks like a Scout to me." Marcus smiled sadly. "David used to call him Scout sometimes, actually. Said Ranger was his official name, but Scout was who he really was. Always exploring, always looking for trouble." The black box sat on the table between them, small and innocent looking. Marcus pulled out a laptop, old but functional. "Should we wait for the police?" "The police might be compromised," one of Marcus's friends said from the doorway. A lean man with sharp eyes and steady hands. "If David was killed for this, then whoever's responsible has reach. We look first, then decide who to trust." Marcus connected the camera to his laptop. The screen flickered, then filled with files. Dozens of them, dated over the last month. The most recent was from 4 days ago, the day Scout had disappeared. "Start with that one," Henry suggested. The video was dark at first, shaky. Then David Mitchell's face appeared, haggard and frightened. Behind him was what looked like a warehouse. Scout's breathing could be heard off camera. "If you're watching this, something's happened to me." David's recorded voice filled the small room. "I've discovered something at Cromwell Security, the company I've been working for. They're not just providing security, they're trafficking weapons, selling them to anyone with money. But it's bigger than that." The camera shifted, showing documents spread on a table. Arms shipments, financial records, photographs. Victor Cromwell, the CEO, he's been using his security contracts to scout targets, rich families, valuable properties. Then he arranges accidents, robberies, makes it look random. The families hire Cromwell Security for protection, not knowing they're hiring the same people who targeted them. Tommy pressed closer to Henry, not fully understanding but sensing the darkness in what they were watching. David continued, "I have evidence of 17 murders, 17 families destroyed so Cromwell could sell them protection. But when I tried to go to the police, I learned Cromwell has people everywhere. Judges, cops, FBI. So I'm going underground. Ranger has all the evidence on his camera. If something happens to me, he knows to find Marcus Webb. Marcus, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Take care of my boy. Make sure the truth comes out. The video cut to another scene. David was in his car, Scout visible in the back seat. It was night, raining. They found me, David was saying to the camera. Victor's men. They're following me. I'm going to try to lose them, but if I can't... He looked back at Scout. If I can't, Ranger knows what to do. I've trained him. He'll hide the evidence, find help. The sound of screeching tires filled the speakers. David's face went white. They're trying to run me off the road. Ranger, Protocol 7. Protocol 7, boy. The camera shook violently. The sound of crushing metal, breaking glass, then darkness. The next file was from Scout's perspective, the camera now attached to his collar. The dog was moving through darkness, injured, limping. He found a place to hide, the construction site, but men were following. Scout crawled into the pipe, going deeper and deeper until he became stuck. The final recordings were 3 days of darkness, occasionally broken by Scout's attempts to free himself. The sound of his whimpering, growing weaker, was almost unbearable. Tommy was crying silently, his hand reaching toward the screen as if he could comfort Scout through time. My God, Marcus breathed. David was murdered, and they left Scout to die because he had the evidence. We have to take this to someone, Henry said. The FBI, the media, someone. Wait, Marcus's friend at the window said sharply. We've got movement. 3 more vans just pulled up. They're surrounding the building. Henry's blood went cold. He grabbed Tommy, pulling him close. How did they find us? Marcus was already on his feet, military training taking over. They must have been tracking us from the construction site. Tom, back exit. Jerry, get everyone to the basement. Mike, call it in. Use the emergency protocol. What's happening? Tommy asked, his voice small and frightened. Before anyone could answer, the clinic's front door opened. But instead of Victor's men, Lisa burst in, still in her scrubs, her face flushed from running. Where's my son? She called out, then saw them. Tommy! Dad! She ran to them, dropping to her knees to embrace Tommy. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Mom, we saved Scout, but bad men want to hurt him. Lisa looked at Henry, confusion and fear in her eyes. Henry quickly explained. The rescue, Scout's true identity, the evidence, the men outside. Lisa's face went through several emotions, disbelief, fear, then something Henry had seen before, the same fierce protectiveness that had gotten her through Michael's death, through single motherhood, through everything life had thrown at her. They're not touching my son or his dog, she said quietly. Lisa, it's not Tommy's dog, Henry started. Yes, he is, Lisa said firmly. I saw how Tommy looked at him. I saw how that dog looked at Tommy. They chose each other, and nobody's taking that away. The sound of car doors slamming made them all freeze. Marcus peered through the blinds. 12 men, tactical gear. This isn't a retrieval. This is an execution squad. The surgery, Tommy said suddenly. Scout's still in surgery. Dr. Elena appeared in the doorway, her surgical gown blood-stained. What's happening? I heard shouting. We need to move Scout, Marcus said. Now. Impossible. I'm in the middle of removing bone fragments. Moving him will kill him. Leaving him will kill him too, Marcus said grimly. That's when they heard it. A voice on a megaphone, cold and professional. This is Victor Cromwell. I know you're in there. You have something that belongs to me. Send out the camera and the dog, and everyone else walks away. You have 2 minutes. Tommy looked up at his mother. Mom, they want to hurt Scout. Lisa's arms tightened around him. They'll have to go through me first. This is insane, Henry said. We're civilians. We can't fight off a private military force. We don't have to fight, Marcus said, a strange smile crossing his face. We just have to survive for about 10 more minutes. What happens in 10 minutes? My son happens. Remember I told you David saved his life in Afghanistan? Well, Jake's now a captain in the Army Rangers. He's stationed at Fort Benning, 40 minutes from here. I called him when we found Scout. He and his unit have been driving very fast. You called in the Army? Henry asked, incredulous. I called in family. David was family, Scout is family, and now, apparently, so are you. Victor's voice came again. 1 minute. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The dog is dying anyway. Our poison made sure of that. Just give us the camera and you can all go home. Poison, Dr. Elena said suddenly. He just told us it was poison. What kind? She ran back toward the surgery, shouting over her shoulder, "Buy me time! If I know what poison, I can save him!" 30 seconds, Victor announced. Marcus's friend Tom spoke urgently into his phone. "Jake, where are you?" A young voice, tinny through the speaker but clear. "5 minutes out. Tell my dad to hold on, cavalry's coming." 5 minutes might as well be 5 hours, Jerry muttered. Tommy suddenly stood up, pulling away from his mother. Before anyone could stop him, he walked to the window and opened it. "Tommy, no!" Lisa lunged for him, but he was already calling out. Victor, I'm Tommy. Scout is my friend. Why do you want to hurt him?" There was silence outside. Then Victor's voice, slightly less cold. "Go back inside, boy. This doesn't concern you." "But Scout saved people. He's a hero. Heroes aren't supposed to die." Henry reached for his grandson, but Marcus stopped him. "Wait," he whispered. "The kid's buying time." Victor's voice came again, impatient now. "Time's up. We're coming in." That's when they heard it. The distinctive thrum of helicopter rotors. Not one, but multiple helicopters approaching fast. "What the—" Victor's voice cut off. Marcus grinned. Jake always did like to make an entrance. 3 Black Hawk helicopters swept over the building, so low the windows rattled. Ropes dropped, and soldiers in full combat gear rappelled down, surrounding Victor's men within seconds. "Drop your weapons!" Now. The voice was young, but commanding. Captain Jake Webb looked exactly like his father, just 20 years younger. Victor's men, faced with actual military forces, had no choice. One by one, weapons clattered to the ground. "Dad, you okay in there?" Jake called out. Marcus opened the door, stepping out with his hands visible, but his head high. "Just fine, son. Good timing." "I brought friends," Jake said, gesturing to his unit. "When you said David's dog was in trouble, well, every man here knew David. He trained half of us in canine tactics." Victor Cromwell stood surrounded by rangers, his expensive suit incongruous among the tactical gear. "You have no authority here. I'll have your commission for this." "Actually," Jake said, pulling out a document, "we have every authority. Turns out, trafficking weapons to terrorist organizations is a federal crime. The FBI has been building a case against you for 2 years. David's evidence just gave them everything they needed." "You can't prove anything," Victor snarled. Victor, Tommy called out, still at the window. "Scout's camera recorded everything. Even when you hurt David, Scout saw it all." Victor's face went white. He hadn't known the camera was recording during David's murder. His confident facade crumbled. "I want a lawyer," he said quietly. "You'll get one," Jake assured him. "After you tell us what poison you used on the dog." Victor laughed bitterly. "Ethylene glycol mixed with sedatives. Slow acting, irreversible after 72 hours. That dog's already dead. He just doesn't know it yet." Lisa gasped. "Antifreeze poisoning." She ran back into the clinic, shouting for Dr. Elena. Henry heard rapid Spanish, medical terms flying back and forth. The FBI arrived minutes later, taking Victor and his men into custody. The black vans were impounded, the weapons confiscated. The clinic parking lot looked like a military operation, which Henry supposed it was. Jake approached them, removing his helmet. "Mr. Peterson, I'm Jake Webb. Thank you for saving Scout. My dad told me what your grandson did." Tommy looked up at the soldier with awe. "Scout saved your life?" "He did," Jake confirmed, kneeling to Tommy's level. 3 years ago, in Afghanistan. Ranger, Scout, found an IED that would have killed my entire squad. David and Scout saved 12 lives that day. "Is he going to save more people?" Jake looked toward the clinic where Dr. Elena and Lisa were fighting to save Scout's life. "He already has, buddy. The evidence he carried will put away some very bad people. But more than that, he brought all of us together. Look around." Tommy looked. The parking lot was full of soldiers, all waiting to hear about Scout's condition. The construction workers from the morning had returned, bringing food and coffee. Neighbors had gathered, drawn by the commotion, but staying to support. "All these people are here because of Scout?" Tommy asked. "All these people are here because of you," Jake corrected. "You saw someone who needed help, and you didn't walk away. That's what heroes do." Hours passed. The sun set, painting the sky orange and pink. Tommy refused to leave, so Lisa had someone bring him clean clothes from home. He changed in the bathroom, then returned to his vigil. Marcus and his friends shared war stories with Jake's unit. Henry found himself at the center of it all. This grandfather who just wanted to take his grandson for a morning walk and had ended up in the middle of a military operation. Finally, near midnight, Doctor. Elena emerged from surgery. She was exhausted, her scrubs soaked with sweat, but she was smiling. "He's going to make it," she announced. The cheer that went up could probably be heard for miles. Soldiers hugged each other. Tommy burst into tears of relief. Lisa held him tight, her own tears flowing freely. "The antifreeze had done damage, Doctor," Elena continued. "But knowing what it was, we could treat it. Fomepizole, aggressive fluid therapy, dialysis. He's not out of the woods yet, but he's fighting. And this dog, he's a fighter." "Can I see him?" Tommy asked. Dr. Elena looked at Lisa, who nodded. "Just for a minute. He's still sedated." They followed her to the recovery room. Scout lay on a heated bed, IV lines running into his legs, monitors beeping steadily. He looked small, vulnerable, nothing like the hero dog everyone had been talking about. Tommy approached slowly, reaching out to touch Scout's paw gently. "Hi, Scout." "It's me, Tommy. You did so good. You were so brave." Scout's eyes fluttered open, just for a moment. His tail moved just an inch, but it was enough. "He knows you're here, Doctor," Elena said softly. "Dogs always know when someone loves them." "I do love him," Tommy said simply. "Is that okay?" "Even though I just met him?" Lisa knelt beside her son. "Sometimes love doesn't need time, baby. Sometimes you just know." Over the next 3 days, Scout's conditions slowly improved. The story had gone national. The boy who saved the hero dog. The evidence that brought down a murder ring. The community that stood together against corruption. Victor Cromwell was charged with 17 counts of murder, along with weapons trafficking, conspiracy, and attempted murder. His network crumbled as associates rushed to make deals with prosecutors. But in the veterinary clinic, none of that mattered as much as Scout's recovery. Tommy came every day after school, reading to Scout from his picture books, telling him about his day, promising him all the adventures they'd have together. On the 4th day, Scout stood up on his own. On the 5th, he took his first steps. On the 6th, he licked Tommy's face and wagged his tail properly for the first time. "He's ready to go home, Doctor," Elena announced on the 7th day. "But he'll need continued care, medication, special food. It won't be cheap." "We'll manage," Lisa said, though Henry could see her doing mental math, calculating costs against her nurse's salary. "Actually," Jake said, having returned to visit, "that won't be necessary. The Army takes care of its own. Scout, Ranger, is officially a retired military working dog. His medical care is covered for life. And there's something else." He pulled out an official-looking document. "This is from the Secretary of Defense. In recognition of his service and the evidence he preserved that saved countless lives, Ranger is being awarded the Medal of Valor. He's only the 75th dog in history to receive it. But more importantly," Marcus added, "David's will specified that if anything happened to him, he wanted Ranger to go to a good family. I think he'd be happy knowing that family is yours." Tommy looked at his mother with hope so bright it could have lit the room. "Can we keep him, Mom? Please?" Lisa looked at Scout, who was looking back at her with those intelligent brown eyes. "We don't have a big house. We don't have a lot of money. But we have love," Tommy said. "And that's what Scout needs most, right?" Lisa smiled through her tears. "Right. Welcome to the family, Scout." The adoption was formalized the next day. Jake's unit attended, along with the construction workers, Marcus and his friends, Doctor, Elena, and half the neighborhood. The local news covered it, calling it the day a community became a family. But the most important moment came that evening when Scout walked into Tommy's house for the first time. He explored every room, sniffing carefully, before returning to Tommy's side and sitting down with a contented sigh. "He's home," Tommy said simply. That night, Scout slept on a bed next to Tommy's, close enough that the boy could reach down and touch him whenever he woke from bad dreams. And Scout, the hero dog who'd seen too much, finally slept peacefully, knowing he was safe, knowing he was loved. 3 months later, At David Mitchell's memorial service, Scout performed his last official duty. With Tommy by his side, he approached David's flag-draped coffin and lay down, placing his head on his paws in the traditional military dog farewell. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. "David would be so proud," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. Scout completed the mission. He brought justice for David and found a family who will love him the way David did. After the service, Tommy asked Jake, "Do you think David knows that Scout's okay?" Jake looked at the boy who'd saved his father's partner, who'd shown more courage than most adults ever would. "I think David knows exactly where Scout is, and I think he's happy." Scout looked up at Tommy, then did something he'd never done before. He stood on his hind legs and wrapped his paws around Tommy's shoulders in an unmistakable hug. "He's saying thank you," Jake explained. "That's something David taught him. He only does it for family." Tommy hugged Scout back, burying his face in the dog's fur. "We're family forever, Scout. Forever and ever." 6 months after the rescue, Tommy and Scout were inseparable. Scout walked Tommy to school every morning, then returned home with Lisa, keeping her company during her off shifts. In the afternoons, he'd be waiting at the bus stop, tail wagging, ready to greet his boy. The nightmares that had plagued Tommy since his father's death had stopped. Scout seemed to sense when bad dreams threatened, moving from his bed to Tommy's, providing warm, comforting presence. "He's healing us," Lisa told Henry one evening as they watched Tommy and Scout play in the backyard. "Both of us. It's like Michael sent him to us, to help us through." Henry nodded, remembering that morning at the construction site that had changed everything. Maybe he did. Maybe sometimes angels come with 4 paws and fur. Scout had also become something of a local celebrity. The construction workers who'd helped save him had adopted the abandoned site, transforming it into a dog park. They named it Second Chance Park, with a plaque that read, "Where a community came together to save a hero and found family in the process." Tommy and Scout visited the park every weekend, and Scout would always pause at the spot where the pipe had been, as if remembering. Then Tommy would call him, and he'd run off, tail wagging, ready for new adventures. The pipe itself had been preserved and turned into a memorial tunnel that dogs could safely play in, with a sign telling Scout's story. Children would crawl through it, imagining they were Tommy, saving a hero dog. Victor Cromwell was sentenced to life in prison, his empire dismantled, his victims finally getting justice. During the trial, Scout's video, evidence had been crucial. The footage of David's last moments, preserved by Scout's determination to complete his mission, ensured Victor would never hurt anyone again. But the most remarkable change was in Tommy himself. The shy, grieving boy who'd started that morning walk with his grandfather had transformed into a confident, compassionate child who wanted to become a veterinarian to help other animals like Scout. "I want to save more heroes," he told his class during show and tell, Scout sitting proudly beside him. "Because every animal deserves someone who won't give up on them." Dr. Elena, who'd become like family after Scout's recovery, offered to mentor Tommy, teaching him about animal care. Every Saturday, Tommy and Scout would visit her clinic, Tommy learning while Scout served as a therapy dog for other injured animals. 1 year after the rescue, on the anniversary of that fateful morning, the entire community gathered at Second Chance Park. Jake's unit attended, Marcus and his friends, the construction workers, Dr. Elena, and hundreds of people who'd followed the story. Tommy stood in front of the crowd, Scout beside him, and spoke with a clarity beyond his years. "A year ago, I heard Scout crying for help. Grandpa says I saved Scout, but that's not true. Scout saved me. He saved all of us. He showed us that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you help anyway. He showed us that families aren't just about blood. They're about who shows up when you need them. And he showed us that sometimes the best things come from the scariest moments." He looked down at Scout, who was looking back with those wise, loving eyes. Scout was left to die in a pipe, poisoned and alone. But he didn't give up. He kept fighting, kept recording, kept believing someone would come. And when we found him, he didn't just bring evidence of bad people doing bad things. He brought all of you together. He made us a family. The crowd erupted in applause. Scout, overwhelmed by the attention, did what he always did when he needed comfort. He pressed against Tommy's leg, and Tommy's hand found his head, a connection that needed no words. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Henry found himself standing with Marcus, watching Tommy and Scout play with other children and dogs. "You know what the real miracle is?" Marcus said quietly. "What's that?" "It's not that Scout survived. It's not even that he brought down Victor. It's that a 5-year-old boy heard a dog crying and wouldn't walk away. In a world where most adults would have kept walking, a child stopped. That's the real miracle." Henry nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Tommy's father would have been proud. "He is proud," Marcus corrected. "Wherever Michael is, he's watching his boy become the kind of man this world needs more of." As the sun set over Second Chance Park, casting long shadows across the grass, Scout suddenly alert to something only he could hear. His ears perked, his body tensed, not in fear but in recognition. "What is it, boy?" Tommy asked. Scout looked toward the horizon, then back at Tommy, his tail wagging slowly. Then he did something he'd only done once before. He stood on his hind legs and hugged Tommy, holding on for a long moment. "He's saying thank you again," someone said, but Tommy knew better. "No," Tommy said softly, hugging Scout back. "He's saying he's home. He's finally, really home." As the years passed, Tommy and Scout's bond only grew stronger. Scout was there for Tommy's first day of middle school, his first heartbreak, his graduation speeches. And Tommy was there for Scout through arthritis, slower walks, and gray creeping into his muzzle. They became advocates for abused animals, visiting schools to tell their story, inspiring other children to stand up for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Tommy started a nonprofit called Scout's Heroes, raising money for abused service animals. The morning walks with Grandpa Henry continued, though now they were slower, more careful. Scout couldn't run like he used to, but his spirit remained unbroken. Every morning, he'd wait by the door, ready for another adventure with his boy and his grandpa. "You know what I learned from Scout?" Tommy, now 13, asked Henry one morning as they walked past the old construction site. "What's that?" "That love isn't about perfect circumstances. It's about showing up when things are broken and saying, 'I'm here anyway.' Scout was broken when we found him. We were broken after Dad died, but we showed up for each other." Henry felt tears prick his eyes. His grandson had grown wise beyond his years, shaped by loss but defined by love. "That's exactly right, buddy," he said, his voice rough. Scout looked up at them both, his eyes still bright despite his age, and gave a soft woof of agreement. Even after everything, the pipe, the poison, the surgery, the years, he was still standing, still protecting, still loving. The camera that had once recorded evidence of murder now sat in a place of honor in their home, retired like its owner. Sometimes Tommy would look at it and remember that morning when a frightened whimper changed everything. But mostly, he just looked at Scout, curled up on his bed, safe and loved, and felt grateful for the twist of fate that had brought them together. Because sometimes the greatest gifts come from the darkest moments. Sometimes heroes have 4 paws, and sometimes a 5-year-old boy and a poisoned dog can save each other in ways that neither of them could have imagined. The story of Scout and Tommy became legend in their town, told to children as an example of courage, to adults as a reminder of community, and to anyone who would listen as proof that love, real, unconditional, unwavering love, can overcome anything. And in a small house on a quiet street, a boy and his dog continued to prove that true every single day. One morning, walk at a time, one gentle touch at a time, one shared heartbeat at a time. Dr. Elena often said that Scout's survival was a medical miracle. The poison should have killed him. The injuries should have been too severe. The trauma should have broken his spirit. But those who knew Scout and Tommy knew the truth. It wasn't medicine that saved Scout, though that helped. It was love, pure, simple, powerful love from a 5-year-old boy who wouldn't give up. And that love had rippled outward, touching everyone it met, transforming a community, bringing justice to the wronged, and proving that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys really do win. The black vans were gone. Victor was in prison. David had justice. And Scout. Scout had exactly what he'd always deserved, a family who loved him, a boy who adored him, and a life filled with belly rubs, treats, and endless games of fetch. It wasn't the life David had planned for him, but somehow, everyone knew it was exactly the life David would have wanted for his partner. On quiet evenings when Tommy would read to Scout from his homework, or when they'd sit together watching the sunset, there was a peace that hadn't existed before, a sense that everything, all the pain and fear and struggle, had led them exactly where they needed to be. "You're my hero, Scout," Tommy would whisper into his fur. And Scout, the decorated military dog, the keeper of secrets, the survivor of unimaginable cruelty, would simply lean into his boy's touch and sigh contentedly, because he was home, really, truly, finally home. And that was the greatest mission accomplished of all. If this incredible story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of compassion and the bond between a child and a dog, please hit that like button right now. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever had a pet that changed your life. And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing true stories that will restore your faith in humanity. Remember, sometimes angels come with 4 paws and a wagging tail. Thank you for being part of Scout and Tommy's journey.